But I wanted to start off with the news tonight that supposedly Man United will be placing a bid of around 50 million euros for Andre Onana. We know what a great goalkeeper he is. Hayes kind of left now officially because his contract's run out. Do you see this bid coming in as imminently as tonight, or do you think it will be in the near future?
I don't know about all that, to be honest with you. One thing I never claimed to be is an ITK, so I don't got sources like that. But honestly, the sooner the better, man, because you know where I stand on this deal. You know where I've stood on this deal for damn near 2-3 years now. I've been one of De Gea's biggest critics, I would say. I think he's been honestly somebody that's really held United back from reaching that next level of being a team that can control games from the front, can sustain pressure, can a goalkeeper that can do all of the modern basics, which I believe is more than just passing with the ball at his feet. I believe it includes commanding your penalty box, coming off of your line, being a presence, being the first line of attack from deep. I believe that De Gea has been somebody that has really held United from taking that next step back. So I'm very, very happy to see that it seems like his time at the club is coming to an end, and that a guy like Onana, who is as close really to the modern day goalkeeper as you can get, seems to be Eric Ten Hag and Man United's number one choice. So like I said, let's hope that it gets done sooner rather than later, so that we can have a guy like that in our squad for preseason.
I muted myself. A lot of people have suggested that United have treated De Gea poorly. The manager is a disgrace for pulling the deal. Fans are having a go. I'm sure you've had pelters this week if you've expressed any happiness about De Gea moving on, that we should be giving him more leeway, more respect. He's a legend. Is that type of thinking regressive to the progression of Man United? Is that, to coin your phrase, Lies, is keeping David De Gea as the number one cheating the process?
Keeping David De Gea is not just cheating the process. Keeping David De Gea is just abandoning the process. It's throwing it out the window, man. Honestly, I do agree that the way United have handled this whole situation, in my opinion, is a bit amateur, because I believe that putting a contract on the table and kind of ripping it out at the last minute and then handing him an even smaller contract with even way less wages to a guy that, love him or hate him, has given you a huge amount of years of servitude, I do believe is a little harsh. My opinion is that the contract should have never been on the table, because I think you look at how many times De Gea has hurt United's chances this season, right? I believe that they would have won the Europa League if De Gea hadn't. If we had any other goalkeeper than De Gea this year, I believe we would have progressed past Sevilla and won the Europa League. And who knows, even in the FA Cup final, although I believe we were second best for large parts of that game, both of those goals, De Gea has a huge part to play in it. And you could tell that City directly targeted him and basically forced him to play long balls to Rashford, because they knew that United could not play out the back with him. So I don't believe that the contract should have been on the table to begin with. But the way they have handled it, if I were De Gea, I would really have a sour taste in my mouth, to be honest with you, because I think for a guy who's given this many years of service to United, that's not the way to progress things. But at the same time, bro, United has to be looking towards the future, man. Honestly, I was worried at one point that we were going to go into the season again with David De Gea as your number one, because I truly believe you can make as many signings as you want. If you have a guy back there, you look at Liverpool, and they ultimately made the final step in their progression. It's when they went from Karius to Alisson. You look at City, it's when they went from Bravo and Joe Hart to Ederson. You look at Arsenal, it's when they went from Leno to Ramsdale. Having a modern day goalkeeper is so crucial to being an elite team at this level. So let's hope United can make that move sooner than later.
Yeah, listen, I don't even think it's that harsh. I understand they maybe shouldn't have offered him a deal, but when reading the majority of the stories around it, it was almost a Man United deal that was offered. And for me, I kind of, again, you're reading now, maybe he signs and there isn't the money for an Onana. This is the problem that the manager's facing. He doesn't want David De Gea. All the things he was saying nice about him publicly 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months ago was him being professional and courteous and not throwing a player under the bus. I believe what's happened is a little bit like with, okay, we won't get Rabiot for you. We'll go and get Casemiro. We won't give you Arnautovic. We'll go and get you your man, Anthony. And I still think Anthony will come good for Man United. I don't even think he was as bad last season as people are projecting personally, but it's almost like they've gone, okay, we'll listen to you and we'll give you what you want. But they're still scrimping and scraping around the money. They're being very, very prudent. They're trying to push that. I mean, if we pick him up for about 40 to 42 million pounds, a player of his quality, experience he has, it's ridiculously good business. But at the same time, this should have been a deal that we did 2 or 3 weeks ago, gone back. What's the asking price? 60. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe you try and work it down a little bit.
To be fair, Terry, we could have even gotten this guy a year ago for free. He left Ajax with 6 months left on his deal to go to Inter, and he's only played one season at Inter.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, again, something we should have been all over. But I think that you're right. We shouldn't have ever offered him a deal. We should have listened to the manager sooner. The problem you then get is the manager gets his way, the deal's pulled. It looks unprofessional and it looks wrong. But from Ten Hag's point of view, he didn't want him. It was something that was kind of forced upon him at the end of the day. And he got left in a very difficult situation. I always remember a famous story. Harry Redknapp didn't want to sign David Nugent. I don't know if you remember David Nugent. He was playing for, I think it was Preston in the Championship. And he was one of the last players ever to get in the England squad whilst being in the Championship with Preston.
He's the one who scored, I think, one goal in one game for England, right?
Yeah. It was going in anyway, and he knocked it over the line. And he got signed by Harry Redknapp at Portsmouth. I think it was Portsmouth. Harry didn't want him. And towards the end of the season, they had an opportunity to sign another striker. He tried to include Nugent in a swap deal. He'd only been at the club like 3 weeks in pre-season. It was something along those lines. And I think Harry kind of plays it down being like that, but that was the story at the time. And this kind of reminds me of that. When you give managers players they don't want, that don't fit their system and philosophy, they get the chance to pull the plug, they will. But the optics of it can look really bad to people. So, yeah, look, from my point of view, I'm just happy that we're hopefully moving on. I'm hopeful tonight the bid goes in. There was another story as well today that we've also put a 30 million euro bid in for Hoyland that has been rejected. It's going to cost a hell of a lot more to get this young talent than 30 million, I would assume.
Yeah, especially when United is involved, to be honest with you. It seems like the minimum asking price is 50 million. Look, Hoyland isn't a player that I've watched too much of. I'll be absolutely honest here. And I don't know really how I feel about it because I look at United last season and people can talk poorly or highly on Rashford's game and his season. I tend to believe that he had a very good season. I think it's amplified by the fact that you look in all competitions, Rashford scored as many goals as all of our other forward options combined. That speaks to how great his season was, and it also speaks to how poorly United's attack really performed last season. Everyone can talk about the goal difference, but it didn't come down to United having a poor defense. It came down to the fact that no one was really putting balls into the back of the net. And when you look at who United was relying on up front for half a season in Weghorst and a crippled Martial, it kind of suggests as much. So that's why really this season, I'm a little pessimistic about the names United are being linked to up front. I don't know if Hoyland is really somebody who from the jump can come into this United team and give you the numbers that you really need for a striker that's leading the line for United. You think of the great number 9s United have had throughout the years, and that's always been a staple of their team. I look at the names like Gonzalo Ramos. I look at Hoyland. I look at really who else has been linked to them. Kolo Muani are these guys that are going to come into United and give you 20 plus goals in the league. I'm not entirely convinced. However, it's yet to be seen that in a system like Ten Hag's, maybe their numbers go up. But I would like to see a guy like Hoyland or a guy like Evan Ferguson perhaps come in with a more experienced, reliable striker in the near future. I don't think that's going to end up happening, though, A, because of United's finances this summer, and B, who's available on the market. So Hoyland, I think long term is a nice prospect, but this season in particular, I don't think we should have too high of expectations for the kid.
Yeah, and if we end up spending the 100 million euros they're asking for, that the world's like now. The pressure then amplifies.
Yeah,
you look at the way we kind of treat young players. We signed Anthony. Now I know you've been highly critical of him. I've seen comments actually say you're an Anthony hater. I don't think he is. Yeah, high standards. And I've had moments where I've criticized him this year, but it's because he came in at 82, 83 million pounds. Yeah. And we tend to, what you're doing is saying, I want these things to improve, but you're giving him time. But for rivals in the media, we saw the way TalkSport were riding out for him. It's unless you're like Zidane or Ronaldinho year one, you get highly criticized. We drop 100 million euros on this kid who isn't scoring like Haaland or Mbappe or Kane. The pressure is going to be so immense. That's also another factor in this deal. And if we're going to spend 100 M's on him, just go and get Harry Kane. And I know he's younger, but if you're going to drop 100 million on him and we're prepared to spend 80 on Harry Kane, you're better off taking some of the money from Hoyland and putting it towards Kane.
Yeah,
because that's a better option. That is a better option of him as the only striker. If you can only get one, put the two deals combined. Man United want to get both. If Man United could, they'd have signed Harry Kane for 80 and about 30 for this kid. They'd have gone to about 120. So for me, if we've got about 120 for two strikers, put that all into Harry Kane and go and get him. Like, I like this kid. If we pick him up for 40 million, 50 million euros, fair enough. You start going near those 70s, 80s, 90s, you know how rivals work. The pressure could just become too much for him too soon. And
you look at, even forget about rivals, right? You look at Martial as a good example of a kid who really hadn't accomplished much in his career, but was seen as like some super talent. We probably paid above the odds for him. And although he had a really good start to his United career, eventually relying on a player of that age with that little experience at a club like United, where forget about rival fans, our own fans are going to put so much pressure on them. I just don't think that's the ideal situation. Like, imagine if we had Martial under the stewardship of a guy like Harry Kane at the time, who Martial isn't expected to do everything. I look at a guy like Hoyland too. If Hoyland goes 5, 6, 7 games without scoring for United, forget about rival fans. Our own fans are going to get on his back. So yeah, I mean, I echo your sentiment, man. This is a huge club with huge expectations, and it's why I always laugh when I see people say like, "Oh, look at Enzo Laffi at Lorient. We should go sign him for United." Guys, the level of standards and expectation at a club like United compared to Atalanta or compared to Lorient or compared to, I don't know, Feyenoord, it's just night and day, man. You can't compare the two.
On top of that, not one single City fan complained that Haaland didn't score in his last 8 games of the season.
Yeah,
he didn't score in the final. Yeah, he didn't score in the final few games of the Premier League to clinch it. Didn't score in the Champions League final or the FA Cup final. But because they won, I didn't see any. I saw zero criticism. And I understand he scored loads of goals already. So you'd say, why would there be criticism? However, Rashford scored 30 goals last season. And because towards the back end of the season, he wasn't scoring at the same rate as the middle, he was getting absolute pelters. But if Man United had won the Premier League and had won the FA Cup final, there would have been zero criticism of Rashford's poor level of goals comparatively to the previous 4 months. And that's the problem with Man United fans. Our expectations are they're nice and high, but they're too concentrated. We put all this pressure on Bruno, Rashford, Sandro, and you're right to. But you're putting all your eggs into those 3 or 4 players. You look at a City, or you look at Liverpool under Klopp when they're at their best. That was spread out amongst so many top-class players. We still don't have that level of quality to spread the responsibility across. And again, you bring in Hoyland at 100 million, it's going to be right. You're a 100 million pound player. You've got to score us to the league. You've got to go and match Haaland. You've got to be better than Kane. And that's just, again, I know what Lee Gunner would say. Well, you're lowering the standards by saying that. No, there's a difference between having high standards and expecting the impossible. I expect my children to be well behaved at school, to learn, to pass their exams, to do well in sport, to try their best. I don't expect my 9-year-old boy to already be doing his degree. There are some child prodigies. There are some prodigies like who do what Haaland and Mbappe do in football. There are some kids that's 8, 9, 10 are doing A levels or doing degrees because they are super geniuses.
Yeah, that's one in a trillion. It's generational.
Exactly. Not literally, Haaland, barring R9, is the first person since R9 to score this amount of goals in Europe at his age. And prior to that, I look back, I can't find anybody for the last 60 years.
Ben Bastian, man, honestly, like you're going back that far.
So, but it's like everyone's got to be that player. But that's impossible. It's never going to happen. But I think they almost know this when they set those expectations, but they just want to moan. They want to be hypercritical. And if you set an expectation that can't be reached, you can always be angry, right? And that, for me, is my worry about doing 100M on him when he ain't quite ready for that response. Now, he could prove us wrong, come in and be amazing. And we're like, wow, I love it. But we'll see. There's a super chat.
Yeah, I just don't think, too. Yeah, I was going to say as well, I just think, like, you look at what Chelsea just paid for, what's his name? Nico Jackson from Villarreal, who relatively, they have about the same amount of experience. Like, they've had one season, really, of kind of taking people's attention. Chelsea got him for 35 million, man. United are the only club on the planet, and it's a bit their own fault because of all the poor dealings that they made over the years. They're kind of like reaping the rewards in the worst way possible. But no, Atalanta is not quoting any other club on the planet 100 million for Hoyland, man. It's just because it's Man United.
No, 110%. Chike here says, Leah's expectations for United this season. Also, when I talk about reality, Terry, I did mean work and your career because I want to work in the NFL, but ESPN are laying off people. I want to get an internship. On the second bit, we'll talk offline for that because I don't know too much about the NFL or where to start work-wise in that. It's not my area of expertise, but they are laying people off. But that's another conversation. But Leah's expectations for Man United.
It depends, really, man. Let me see the signings at the end of the season, and I can at the end of the summer, and I can tell you. But I would say, in my opinion, based on what I think is realistic for United to do, I think the best case scenario is probably third again, and that's if they get all their business right. I don't think United can make enough realistic signings to bridge the gap between Arsenal and City this summer. So I think the best they could do is third. I would expect top four again.
Yeah, 100% the same. If we get the sign again, takeover happens. If that happens tomorrow morning, and there's new money, and we go and get Kane, and we go and get De Jong, and we
that
go
changes.
and Onana, and it changes. But yeah, right now, I just don't think we're going to get onto Arsenal later. I don't think we've done enough yet to catch them, let alone win the win the Premier League title just yet. So yeah, that's just me personally. Other people might see that a little differently, but there we go. Terry, why is United all noise and no results in the transfer market, whilst clubs like Liverpool are doing their deals quietly and fast? Are United a circus club? Well, you've got to remember, yeah, you could argue that we are, and I don't take that as an offence. However, you look at the Onana deal, the English press has only been talking about it for 2 days. The difference is that when anyone talks about Man United, the news trends. As an example, with Liverpool, we know they've been talking to Thuram and Kone all summer because that's been news every week. We knew they were talking to McAllister from about April. So, barring Soboslai, their other deals, one that's completed, the other two are still ongoing, have been very loud and public. Tonight, we're going to talk about later, Liverpool looking at Lavia. That's loud and public. So, I want to be really fair to Man United here. I don't like how some of our sagas drag on, and we've created that problem. But when we act like all of Liverpool's business is no discussion in the media, barring one, the rest of them are all over the media. So I think it depends who you support, Lana. If you're a Man United fan, I think you notice yours in the media more than rivals because it's all you seek it more, if that makes sense, you know. But yeah, I don't think Man United aren't the greatest at transfers, but to say like we're exponentially worse than all the other top six, I personally think. I remember I did a stat on this. It's about 3 years ago I did it. Everyone said we take too long to get our deals done. So I worked out the average day from the end of the season, the average amount of days until we made our first signing of the summer, and the average amount of days over a 5-year period until we signed our marquee of the summer. Liverpool and City were the best, and they averaged for their marquee player like 37 days. Man United's was 42. So it was a case of they're better, but are they that? I think with Man United fans again, I think we exaggerate how bad things are. Not the overpaying and not buying the wrong players. I'm just talking about how quickly we get deals done. The Sancho one everyone thinks about is it took 2 years, but you know, look how long Van Dijk took. They had to pull away from that because they got done for tapping up, and we're like everyone's got examples of that. I just think we're hypercritical. I think, but
I think too. Look, and United fans are very gullible as well. I think all football fans are gullible in the transfer market, but look, we get linked to every single player under the sun, man. Like I think a few seasons ago, someone tallied up the amount of players United were linked to that summer. I think it was like 90, bro, in terms of like what all the players that media outlets and journalists and pundits had linked United to. It was 90. And United are clearly not interested in 90 players in one window. So it's also about really like knowing who your sources are. So if you're expecting United to really be chasing down Neymar because, I don't know, the Sun told you so, prepare to be disappointed, honestly.